We're finally getting to the end of the road when it comes to Acclaim Simpsons games. There's only 2 more games left, so there's a light at the end of the tunnel for this rocky era. There's a lot you can say about the Acclaim Simpsons games, especially Virtual Bart if my last video is anything to go by, but one area where Acclaim was surprisingly consistent was with the Game Boy. As there have been 4 separate Simpsons Game Boy games before this, I've already covered this topic already, but let's quickly recap. The Game Boy and the Game Gear were the systems that received the most Simpsons games. While the Game Gear received ports of the console games, the Game Boy mostly received original standalone titles. There was a pattern with the Game Boy games. Each holiday season would have a new console game and then an unrelated original Game Boy game alongside it. 1991 would give us Escape from Camp Deadly, a decent platformer and the best game to come from Imagineering. 1992 would have Bart vs the Juggernauts, a frustrating minigame collection with plenty of Simpsons characters and good presentation. There was also a port of Krusty's Funhouse at the start of 1993, the only console port the Game Boy would see. It was a pretty impressive port, but suffered from the smaller screen size and slower gameplay. The next original game would miss 1993, instead releasing in February 1994 with Bart and the Beanstalk. A surprisingly okay platformer, which is let down by its weak premise. That takes us to the final Game Boy game published by Acclaim, Itchy and Scratchy and Miniature Golf Madness. The general consensus online is that Itchy and Scratchy and Miniature Golf Madness released in November 1994, although I had a hard time confirming this release date. There were very few reviews of this game. By this point in time, magazines seemed to stop caring about Simpsons games, so they saw reduced media coverage overall. Where Bart vs the Space Mutants was reviewed everywhere, games like Virtual Bart either got smaller reviews or didn't get reviewed at all. The reviews for Miniature Golf Madness that are listed on mobygames.com are from early 1995, not November 1994. These reviews from 1995 perhaps point to the game releasing in early 1995, but there are signs that it might have released before November 1994 instead. Similar to Bart and the Beanstalk, the artwork for this game has a copyright year of 1993, not 1994, which is very strange if the game came out in November 1994. The copyright year in the game itself also lists 1993 rather than 1994. An interesting detail here is that the European version of the game updates the copyright year to 1994 on the cart, but in-game it still lists 1993. Going back to video game magazines from the time to try and solve this mystery, Nintendo Power released a guide of the game in their August 1994 issue. It's a very high-effort guide, spreading over multiple pages with lots of artwork of Itchy and Scratchy, but if the game came out in November, why would they release a guide for the game in August? Bart and the Beanstalk got a guide in Nintendo Power as well, but that came out in February 1994, the same month it released, not 3 months before. In the magazine GB Action, a gaming magazine from the UK that only focused on Game Boy games, they actually reviewed the game in their September 1994 edition, sooner than any US magazine I could find, and it lists the release date as September. For US magazines, in the December 1994 edition of EGM, there was a preview of the game in their Next Wave section, which implies it hadn't been released yet. I couldn't find any sales charts from the time that feature Game Boy games, so I guess we'll have to trust that the internet is correct and that it did come out in November 1994, but there's evidence pointing to a potential earlier release in Europe and a later release in the US. This confusion is likely because of the game's link to its companion game for the SNES, the Itchy and Scratchy game, as Acclaim ended up releasing 2 separate Itchy and Scratchy games around the same time. I'll go into the Itchy and Scratchy game next time, as this video is going to be all about Miniature Golf Madness. We have another new developer for this with Beam Software, an Australian developer that started back in 1980. It's amazing how Acclaim was able to find pretty much the exact same type of studio for all the Simpsons games they published. Beam Software once again tick all the boxes. They worked on games in the 80s for the Commodore 64 and the ZX Spectrum, but worked on a large number of licensed games in the 80s and 90s. They were a machine in the 80s, making 47 games during that decade. Their production in the 90s was similar to Imagineering. They were pumping out numerous games a year, picking up licenses like Terminator 2, We're Back a Dinosaur Story, and quite appropriately, Tom and Jerry. Miniature Golf Madness would be the only Simpsons game they would develop. Beam Software would later become a part of Infogrames for a few years, before then becoming a part of Chrome Studios. You likely know Chrome Studios for the Ty the Tasmanian Tiger series, but Bean became Chrome Studios Melbourne, who instead worked on even more licensed games before being closed down in 2010. When you look at such a large library of games and legacy from a developer, it should mean we're in safe hands, but I've played too many Simpsons games from too many developers to know that that's probably not the case. It's hard not to be a bit interested in this game though. It's a new developer stepping in to make what seems to be a golf game on the original Game Boy that's centered on Itchy and Scratchy, two of the more minor characters from the show. Despite how odd this game is, there doesn't seem to be that many people that care about this game, as this very much fits into the forgotten Simpsons games from the mid-90s. There's no real love or hate for this game, but that hasn't stopped it from becoming quite rare. To get a box copy of Miniature Golf Madness, I had to spend the most amount of money I ever had on a single video game. In the UK at least, this is the most expensive Simpsons game, likely due to its obscurity making it hard to get. This rarity is probably another reason why people don't talk about this game anymore, so let's give it a proper look. Virtual Bart didn't turn out so well last time, but that game has set such a low quality bar that the only way is to go up from now on. We start with the usual developer logos before showing the Itchy and Scratchy logo from the show. This is followed by a couple of images showing Scratchy chasing Itchy with a golf club, with the text Itchy and Scratchy and Miniature Golf Madness. These images are all about presenting the game as an episode of Itchy and Scratchy, by copying the title cards that you would normally see from the show itself. There isn't much setup for the game beyond this, but the manual gives a brief description of what's happening. This is a special episode of Itchy and Scratchy, where you get to control Scratchy. The episode you're taking control of is about Scratchy playing miniature golf. When Itchy comes along, booby traps the course and starts attacking Scratchy, as you would expect in an Itchy and Scratchy cartoon. While I'm talking about the manual, the back of the manual has this advert for Bart the Beanstalk, which has a properly drawn and coloured version of one of the images used in the game. I don't think this is a good advert for people buying Bart the Beanstalk, who would want to play the game which includes Mr. Burns dressed like this and Bart with a depressed cowl, but as someone who's played Bart the Beanstalk, it's really neat seeing how this image from the game was supposed to look. Back to the game itself, and pressing a button takes you to the plainest menu I've ever seen, and selecting start takes you into the game. Miniature Golf Madness is a side-scrolling golf platformer. You control Scratchy, who can move, jump and use his golf club. You can use your golf club as a weapon, but more importantly, you can use it to putt to hit a golf ball. The basis of the gameplay is miniature golf, so the goal for every level is to get the ball to the end of the course by putting it and getting it past the different obstacles. You're doing this while trying to avoid Itchy, who will directly attack you and will kill you in one hit if he reaches you. You can take out Itchy with your golf club or one of the many weapons you can find in the levels. Scratchy controls quite well. The platforming is very simple in this game, which allows you to focus more on the golf aspect. There's no real momentum with Scratchy, but you move at a decent speed and you're given a nice big jump. There's no precision platforming here. You might need to ride a moving platform or time a jump, but it's all very generous. You'll never be stuck on a section because of the platforming. It's all about getting the ball to where you want it to go. To hit the ball, you go up to it, press up, and this sets Scratchy up to putt the ball and the camera will scroll to show what's in front of you. You then hold B to start putting and the power bar will go up and down. Letting go of B will hit the ball and the power is determined by wherever the bar was when you let go of B. It's all about timing when you let go of the B button, as the meter goes up and down at a set speed, so if you want a powerful shot, you wait for it to fill up and then let go. It's easy to hit shots, but takes a bit of practice to be able to time the shots properly to get the power you want. The first level of the game is called Grim Furry Tales, which is a simple level but requires you to hit some of the more powerful shots. There are multiple hills you need to hit the ball up, and if your shot is too weak, then the ball will roll back down the hill. The end of the level is the hardest part. Each level ends with a specific putting challenge to get the ball in the hole. For Grim Furry Tales, it's Old Mother Hubbard and her shoe, and you need to hit the ball hard enough to launch it over the slope and land in the dip on top of her shoe. It's simple, but there's a big difference between the most powerful shot you can do and a shot that isn't quite as powerful. This shot requires you to hit it as hard as you can, but it's easy to mistime it, which means if you're a little bit off, the shot won't be powerful enough. This isn't really an issue with the game. It makes sense that the most powerful shot would be the harder one to do, and once you play the game enough and improve, you'll become more consistent at it. The power meter could be better with assisting in figuring out what this timing is though. Normally in a golf game, you'll finish your shot and then the meter will stay on screen to show you what type of shot you did and how powerful it was. It's a nice way to help celebrate when you've done a great shot, or if you've made a mistake and you could have done better, it helps you understand by how much your timing was off so you can adjust. In Miniature Golf Madness, the meter quickly disappears after you hit the ball, so it's not really clear if you let go of B too early or too late. You know the timing is wrong if you're going for the strongest shot and that didn't happen, but you don't know by how much. This is more of a minor point about the game, but I struggle with the putting at first as it requires you to use the most powerful shot multiple times as soon as the first level, but it's lacking a bit of visual reinforcement to help you learn how that works. Grim Fairy Tales is a bit unremarkable, but it does its job as the first level in the game. There's characters like Humpty Dumpty in the background as part of the fairy tale theme, but most of it takes place in a cave with not much in it. It's linear with a few platforms moving up and down that you need to get the ball on, and there's not much else. Hole 2 is Malice in Krusty Land, this one being heavily themed around Krusty, with Krusty's head on the walls, Krusty Jack in the boxes, and the end of the level has a giant Krusty head that you need to hit the ball onto his tongue. This level is much bigger and more fleshed out than the first one. Alongside the Krusty theming, there's also these seesaws that you need to put the ball onto, and then jump onto the other side of it to launch the ball upwards. The game is split into 9 different levels, or holes, and each of them has something like this, some type of gameplay gimmick that's unique to that level. This is one of the game's strengths. Each level has a specific theme that helps separate it from the other levels, and it always introduces something new. This game is all about miniature golf that you're playing as part of a cartoon, and that concept allows them to do something different with every level. It doesn't get that crazy with its ideas, especially the fact that this is meant to be a cartoon, but you know each hole will have its own unique obstacles to help keep the gameplay interesting throughout. In Hole 2, it's seesaws and the Krusty Jack in the boxes, and there's a level later with magnets that push the ball forward, and another level that has cannons that you need to hit the ball into so the cannon will fire it to the next section. Again, there's no ideas that are mind-blowing, but it takes advantage of the mini-golf concept and uses that to create a nice variety in its levels. The Krusty head at the end of Hole 2 might be the hardest end of hole challenge shot in the entire game. You have to hit the ball onto Krusty's tongue, but if you get the timing a little bit wrong, the tongue will push the ball back. I never got a good feel for this. There's a small time window to land this shot, but I didn't know what that window was, and trying to line up the power of my swing with the tongue coming in and out was too difficult. It's too hard for the second level of the game. Whenever I do well at the rest of this hole, I always wasted a lot of time and hits here. Luckily the later end of level challenges aren't as tricky, so this is a random one-off difficulty spike. The third hole is called Rest in Pieces, which is a spooky horror themed level. It's visually quite similar to the first level, with it mostly taking place in a cave. There are 2 gimmicks in this level. The first are the coffins, which you need to wait until they open up to create a ramp and then hit the ball over the ramp to launch the ball across. The second gimmick are the pipes. The ball can fall into a pipe and will be taken to the other end of it to a different part of the level. You need to use the ramps from the coffins to launch the ball into the correct pipe, otherwise the ball will be taken to a dead end and you'll have to hit the ball back through the pipe to try again. It's not too bad this level. It's the shortest level in the game and only has a par of 9. Like normal golf, Miniature Golf Madness has a scoring system based on how many times you hit the ball to complete the course, with the goal being to hit the ball as little times as possible. Each hole has its own par target to aim for, although they're not set in the same way as normal golf. Par isn't the expected score if you play the course normally and do a decent job, it's more of a score for those who have mastered the course and make very few mistakes. The par scores are all achievable, but you need to figure out the ideal route to take the ball and make no major mistakes to reach par. Luckily, par doesn't really mean much in this game. You can hit the ball as many times as you like, and as long as you putt the ball at the end, it still counts as you beating the level. The only thing beating the par score does is give you an extra life. If you're playing this casually, then it's best to ignore par and focus on getting to the end, but the par scores are there for those who really enjoy the game and want an extra goal to aim for, like beating the entire game below par. In hole 3, it's possible to get the lowest score for any of the holes. You're meant to use the ramps and pipes to get to the end, but if you putt the ball so it lands where the bats are near the first coffin, one of the bats will pick up the ball. They will then take the ball all the way to the end of the level, skipping the majority of the hole. I was able to get a score of 3 due to this and easily get that extra life. This is something else that makes this game fun. There are different ways to get the ball to the end, and you can come across secrets like this. This bat trick actually confused me at first. I thought my ball had disappeared, but luckily the game does give you a way to track your ball. In the bottom right hand corner there are 4 arrows, and the arrows that are greyed out tell you where the ball is relative to Scratchy. No matter how far away from the ball you get, you can easily find it again thanks to these arrows, which is a really nice feature. It allows you to explore the levels and plan your route without needing to stress too much about if you'll find your ball again. Next up for hole 4 is a pirate themed level called Pirates of the Scratchabean, which is a pretty terrible pun. We have the cannons here that I mentioned before, and these chains that the ball will automatically roll up even if the ball is rolling slow, as well as pools of water which can make the ball a bit more floaty, allowing you to hit the ball upwards off ramps. This level can be a bit tricky at first, as it relies a lot on being able to hit the most powerful shot. If you aren't able to hit a powerful shot consistently, then you're going to struggle here. It's mostly because of these underwater ramps. It's easy to hit the ball too lightly, then have to hit the ball back onto the other side of the slope to try again. The ball can also stop on the slopes, but it doesn't stop in place, it will very slowly roll back down until it reaches the bottom. You can try and hit it, but it will stop you putting if the ball rolls past you, making it hard to hit the strongest shot while the ball is also slowly rolling. It can be a bit tedious dealing with this. There's no time limit to worry about, but it's not fun having to wait for your ball to roll back down. The rest of the level is decent, although now we're on level 4, there's a general problem I want to talk about with this game. It doesn't feel like Itchy and Scratchy. That might sound weird as you're playing as Scratchy and you're frequently attacked by Itchy in cartoony ways, but overall the game feels like it's missing something. The game starts with title cards similar to Itchy and Scratchy, like it's an actual episode of the show, but at no point does the game ever play the Itchy and Scratchy theme song. That would be so easy to include with how short that song is, but instead we only have 2 music tracks in the game, one for the menus and one for gameplay. As video game music goes, it's fine, but it's completely original music that's not connected to The Simpsons, and as there's only one song that plays during gameplay, that gets old very fast. They allow you to turn off the music at the beginning of the game, which is a nice option to have, but this isn't an option that should be needed for most players in the first place. For the levels themselves, they do a good job of having different themes that you would expect from miniature golf, but they aren't themed in a way that make it feel like Itchy and Scratchy. There are references to Simpsons characters like Krusty in the second level, but these are Simpsons references crammed into mini golf, which removes it from feeling like an Itchy and Scratchy cartoon. The world of Itchy and Scratchy doesn't include Simpsons characters, so seeing Krusty everywhere just doesn't really fit. The idea of the game is that it's a playable Itchy and Scratchy cartoon, but it feels much more like a vaguely Simpsons themed mini-golf game instead. It doesn't feel like an Itchy and Scratchy episode, and nothing confirms this more than the title cards that you see for every hole. Instead of featuring Itchy and Scratchy, each one shows Bart in some type of costume which matches the theme of the level. This isn't a game about Bart, but he's the one in all the title cards, likely because he's the most popular character from the show, even though he has nothing to do with this game. The game ends up being an unsatisfying mix of being a mini-golf game with some Itchy and Scratchy elements and some general Simpsons references, and the way they all come together make the game a bit more bland than expected. As this is a mini-golf game, this either should have been a Simpsons mini-golf game where you play as different members of the Simpsons family and pull in direct references from the show to form the courses, or commit to making it feel like an Itchy and Scratchy cartoon and include the theme song and make each of the courses based on an actual episode of Itchy and Scratchy. Like in Bart's House of Weirdness, you had the Too Much TV level that recreated direct episodes of Itchy and Scratchy. Each of the 9 holes could have done the same thing in this game. The theming of each hole in Miniature Golf Madness is still pretty good from a gameplay perspective, but as an Itchy and Scratchy game, it comes across as half-baked. It feels closer to a game that was repurposed to have Itchy and Scratchy in it, like Krusty's Funhouse, rather than something that was properly made to recreate Itchy and Scratchy. Moving on to the next hole, and we have Ice Cream of Genie, which is an Arabian Nights themed level. The main gimmick here are the pressure pads, where if you stand on them, then some type of projectile will be fired at you which will kill you if you touch it. This level is a step up in difficulty, and it's in part due to the pressure pads, but it's mostly because of Itchy. Itchy appears multiple times in every level. He has specific spots that he spawns, and he has a specific weapon for each spawn location. If Itchy manages to hit you in any way, you will die and lose a life. If you can take out Itchy, then he won't respawn in that location again. It's not so much Itchy is reappearing everywhere, it's more that there are multiple Itchies and you can kill them all to clear out the level if you want. To be blunt, dealing with Itchy in this game is frustrating, although that may have been the point. Itchy will appear on screen with very little warning and will normally charge at you, giving you very little time to react. He'll then kill you in one, showing a little animation of Scratchy dying, and sometimes Itchy will laugh at you before running away. It feels intentional because this is the closest this game gets to feeling like Itchy and Scratchy. Itchy is able to kill Scratchy easily in the cartoons, and there's clearly a lot of work done with the different animations that you see of Scratchy dying. The game's health system only allows you to get hit once, but you do get 9 lives, probably because Scratchy is a cat, so you can die more often than typical platformers. You can also find extra lives in the level, giving you more chances. This is all well and good. They want to have Itchy killing Scratchy a lot to match the cartoon, and they give you a lot of lives to allow that to happen, but it doesn't stop it from being frustrating. When you're exploring the levels, trying to learn which way to go, and figure out how you want to hit the ball, being instant killed by Itchy coming from off screen isn't fun. It doesn't help that there's a delay to Scratchy's attack. You can use the golf club or one of the many weapons placed around the level, but when you press B to attack, it takes a second for the attack to happen, which reduces the time you have to react to Itchy. This delay when attacking may be the real reason this system doesn't work. Seeing Itchy and pressing B to attack, only to be instantly killed during your animation, adds to the annoyance. The placement of Itchy in hole 5 feels pretty cheap. Like when Itchy is hiding in the walls and throwing knives, there's nothing to indicate Itchy is in the wall and you're just going to die to him at first. Your best bet for getting past Itchy and reducing how much you die is a mix of memorization and going ahead of your ball to kill Itchy first before you start going through the level properly. Most games require a bit of memorization, and the fact that you can kill Itchy in advance is appreciated, but this all feels at odds with the fact that this is a golf platformer. The level design is pretty solid, with a good mix of areas to explore and different gameplay gimmicks in each level, so the fun part of the game is figuring out the best way to get your ball through the levels. Pairing this with the instant kill mechanic doesn't work. It interrupts what works about the game with frustrating moments rather than build upon what makes the game fun. To be fair, Itchy doesn't ruin the game, it can still be fun, and once you play the game enough, you'll be able to work around Itchy, but the least enjoyable moments in the game are when you're going around a level and getting instant killed in a way that feels near impossible to avoid without knowing about it ahead of time. If Scratchy's attack didn't have a delay, or if there was better signposting for when Itchy would appear, it would make a big difference for smoothing out the most annoying moments of the game. After Ice Cream of Genie, we have hole 6 called Chop Along Scratchity. This is a western themed level, where there are cannonballs that Scratchy can ride on and TNT, which will blow up to send the ball to the next section of the level. This level is quite big. It has alternative routes you can take, and there's more to see by exploring the level and finding areas with extra lives and weapons. Hole 5 has alternative routes as well. There are times where you come up to a bit of a crossroads, where if you can make a harder shot, you can take a quicker route, but if you miss that shot, then you can still beat the level, you're just going a longer way round that will loop back to the main path. Putting Itchy to one side, exploring the levels is really fun to do. Scratchy controls well, and there's no precise platforming or instant kill pits, so you're free to run around and just see what you find. There are secret areas in every hole, which you usually find by jumping through hidden passages in the walls. You can find extra lives, but also you can find erasers, which will take one stroke off your score, so exploring is very worthwhile. Times when I was exploring and finding secrets is probably when I was having the most fun with the game. Getting around is easy to do, and you're very much rewarded for taking the time to look around and find secret areas. Similar to hole 1, hole 6 has quite a few parts where you need to hit the ball onto platforms that move up and down, and this exposes a problem with the putting. There are times where if there isn't enough room next to the ball, then Scratchy won't go into the putting position. This sounds reasonable, but it's surprisingly easy to run into these situations because of these platforms. If the ball is at the wrong edge of the platform, you either have to hit the ball off the platform to then hit the ball back onto the platform, or try and quickly hit the ball when the platform reaches the ground. It's a little awkward, and with a bit of bad luck with where the ball stops, you can waste a lot of hits and time trying to get the ball to land in the position on the platform that you need. If these platforms were something only used in one level, this wouldn't be much of a problem, but they appear multiple times across the game, and some levels will have numerous sets of these platforms. They're just a bit too small, considering that Scratchy can't always start putting in the direction that you want. Hole 6 ends with what looks like a cowboy version of Skinner that you need to avoid his bullets and get the ball in the hole without the bullets knocking the ball back. Hole 7 is called Patty Meltdown, and it takes place in the nuclear power plant. There are magnets that push the ball in different directions, as well as conveyor belts with electricity being sapped downwards that you need to avoid. This is one of the better levels in the game. Nice strong theming with the power plant aesthetic, and interesting little gameplay ideas tied to that theme, and Itchy's placement doesn't feel as cheap in this level. If this is your first playthrough of the game and you didn't get a game over before this level, you'll likely get a game over here. Once you lose all your lives, you reach the game over screen, but you do get 2 continues. I kind of love this continue screen. We have another bootleg Krusty the Clown, and Scratchy here looks, dare I say it, a bit cute. You can get extra lives in levels, but you'll never find any continues, so once you use both the continues that you start with, you get a proper game over and you're taken back to the beginning of the game. There's no passwords or save system, so you're always starting from hole 1. There are only 9 holes in the game, so that's 9 levels in total, so it makes sense you start from the beginning as there isn't a large amount of content. If you explore enough, then you'll find plenty of extra lives, and with the 2 continues you get, it feels pretty reasonable having to beat this in one go. The fact that your golf score doesn't block progress helps a lot. Getting to the end of each level and putting the ball is enough to beat it, which allows you to get through the game, but it also gives you a chance to get better at the game to improve your score, if that's something you want to do. Hole 7 ends outside with one of the cooling towers pushing back the ball when it glows. This actually might be one of the easiest end of level challenges as the timing isn't too bad. Following that we have Hole 8, an underwater theme level called 20,000 Mice Under the Sea. The whole level looks like it's underwater, but I don't believe it is, as there's no physics changes, and there are pipes that are shooting streams of water downwards. The main gimmick of this level are the doors. If the ball goes into one of them, it's taken to a nearby door and you can enter that same door to be teleported to the same place. Most areas have a different set of doors and you have to get the ball into the correct door so it's taken to the next area. Because of these doors, this is my least favourite level of the game. Hole 5 is pretty rough due to all the cheap deaths, but for Hole 8, it's all about making sure you take the correct route, otherwise the ball is warped backwards. There are times where you need to get the ball to a specific door, but messing up your shot can mean the ball goes into the wrong door and it'll warp the ball the wrong way and you'll have to repeat a previous section to try again. The previous levels haven't done this that much. If you messed up then, you might need to hit the ball again to readjust it to get a second chance, but it never sent you back. In Hole 8, you waste so much time and strokes redoing the same sections that you've already completed because you missed one shot. Missing a shot, losing a stroke and having to try again is its own punishment. Warping you backwards feels unnecessary. It's not really a terrible level, as none of the shots are overly difficult, but it's a bit too easy to build up a very high score here and waste a lot of time. After getting the ball past a giant octopus monster, it's time for the final hole in the game, 9.5 Shrieks. This is another horror themed level, although this time it takes place in a haunted mansion. There are ghosts that will reset your ball if you hit them, and hands coming out of the ground that you can use to fire your ball forward. We go from the worst level with Hole 8 to the best one with Hole 9. I love the setting here. It all takes place in one mansion, and you start at the top left corner and have to work your way down to the bottom right corner to eventually escape the mansion. When you go to the sides, you can see the night sky outside and you can see the roof shape with the bricks. Gameplay wise, the hands are a nice idea, where after the hand grabs the ball, it's up to you to press B at the right time to shoot it at the right angle to avoid the ghost. It's the longest hole in the game with a par of 28, but it feels like a good final challenge. It's big, but that doesn't stop it from being fun figuring your way out of this mansion. Once you do escape and putt your ball into the hole, that's the end of the game. You get one last look at your scorecard, then it shows a set of images showing Scratchy whacking Itchy's eyes out of his head to use them like you would a golf ball. You then get a chance to enter your name for any high scores you set for any of the holes before ending off with the credits. It took me 5 attempts to complete the game. As it doesn't matter what score you get for each hole, you just need to get to the end without running out of lives, which is very doable once you start getting familiar with each of the levels. The first time I beat this game, it took me an hour and 10 minutes, making it one of the longest Simpsons games on the Game Boy. In the end, it actually felt a little long for a Game Boy game that you can't save your progress for, but if you really like the game, then you can easily play it more to beat it in under an hour. It helps that this game is very replayable. Each level has its range of secrets to find, meaning the more you play it, the more secrets you'll find by exploring. There are 9 holes to practice and master, and the pass scores give you a target to aim for. You can get lost in this game, learning everything about it and getting better and better to lower your scores for each of the holes as much as you can. It's something you can do, but unfortunately the game doesn't give you much of a reward for doing so. You get an extra life for every time you beat the pass score for a hole, but that's not that useful if you're already good at the game, and there are no alternative endings or extras to unlock. The pass scores are a little bit worthless, which is shown by the fact that the world record speedrun for this game doesn't even get par for every course, although that might be because only one person has ran this game. This doesn't stop it from being a replayable game and something a kid with a Game Boy could play a lot if they wanted to, but it needed some unlockables to give you that extra push to do so. Itchy and Scratchy in Miniature Golf Madness ends up being something pretty good, but flawed and strangely forgettable. This is a golf platformer for the Game Boy, something nobody asked for, but for the most part they found a way to make it work. They kept the movement simple and responsive, and they limited the number of hazards in levels to allow you to get around the levels easily. This means you can focus on learning each of the holes and have fun exploring and finding all the secrets. Every hole has their own unique gimmicks to mix up the golf gameplay, and each hole also has a specific theme. When you're working your way through the levels, finding items and making different shots with your putter, it's pretty enjoyable. Saying this, there are problems with the gameplay. Having Itchy kill you in one might help tie it to the game's source material, but it's more irritating than engaging, and it gets in the way of the golf platforming gameplay when you're being instantly killed multiple times. There are other issues as well, where sometimes the levels aren't particularly fun, like the doors in hole 8, and dealing with the moving platforms, which can be awkward at times. Adding all this up means that the game ends up being decent for the Game Boy. It's different but manages to make that work. I can describe it as not bad as a video game, but it has a bigger issue as an actual Simpsons game. This doesn't feel like a proper Itchy and Scratchy game. It's missing the title theme music, and outside of playing as Scratchy and being attacked by Itchy, the rest of the game is just mini golf with a few Simpsons references thrown in. It's a mix of concepts which don't work together. Is this a mini golf game, a Simpsons game, or an Itchy and Scratchy game? By trying to mix all three together, none of these concepts really shine, and it makes the game more forgettable as a result. It's a mini golf game first, and while it's a pretty fun one, the gameplay isn't interesting enough to make it stand out on its own. Without properly theming itself around Itchy and Scratchy, or scrapping Itchy and Scratchy so it's focusing on The Simpsons itself, it doesn't establish a clear identity, which is strange considering how unique this game is. It's an Itchy and Scratchy golf platformer on the Game Boy. It should be weird enough to stick out, but it doesn't. Let's say the game was successful at feeling like a proper Itchy and Scratchy game. It would still be a game based around a very small part of The Simpsons. Itchy and Scratchy are not that important in the grand scheme of things. As they're cartoon animals, it was probably easier to make a video game out of them than something else, but it doesn't mean you have something that feels like it's tied to The Simpsons. It means we're left with a game that's based on a very specific part of The Simpsons that doesn't really do that part justice. This lack of appeal makes it hard to recommend, and overall it feels lacking as an idea, but if you do play it, then you'll likely still have a pretty good time with it. You just might never think about it again after beating it. For ranking Miniature Golf Madness, it feels similar to Bart and the Beanstalk, where it's a flawed premise but a decent game, so I'm going to put it one above Bart and the Beanstalk on the list. It's a more interesting and polished game than Bart and the Beanstalk, but if you want to play something that feels like The Simpsons, then Bart vs. the World on the NES is better, and ultimately Bart's House of Weirdness is better, despite the frustration both those games can cause. So that's the end of looking at all the Simpsons games that came to the original Game Boy. Acclaim supported the handheld with 5 Simpsons games, and it's probably the best set of games for any system from the 90s. On the top end there's Escape from Camp Deadly, a game that can be tricky to get into, but ends up being Imagineering's best platformer and an enjoyable challenge to beat. Bart vs. the Juggernauts is on the other end of the scale. It's a game with great presentation, but too many of its minigames are overly difficult or are just boring and tedious. Outside of Bart vs. the Juggernauts, these are all solid games for the Game Boy. Not the best that the handheld has to offer, and each has their own problems which stop them from being standout titles, but they're all functional games that have their moments. As a collection of games though, like with what we've seen with Miniature Golf Madness, they're all a bit forgettable. I like Escape from Camp Deadly, but it's a basic platformer based on Bart Simpson going to summer camp. Krusty's Funhouse is an impressive port in many ways, but it's the worst version of a game that has 8 different ports that you can play. Miniature Golf Madness is almost too unique, and it doesn't capture The Simpsons, which is especially disappointing when it's the 12th Simpsons game that was released. That leaves Bart and the Beanstalk, a game, like Escape from Camp Deadly, takes some time to get into, but it's an okay platformer that's a Jack and the Beanstalk parody. It's nice to say the Game Boy had decent Simpsons games, but there's a reason people don't talk about them. They're all based off premises that aren't that interesting, and the games aren't good or bad enough to be noteworthy. I can still somewhat recommend these games to Simpsons fans, I suppose, but they're also easy to skip. Now that I've played them all, I can see why they're somewhat lost to time. If it sounds like I'm being too harsh on these games, it's because to explain why something is forgettable, you have to criticize it, even if the games aren't that bad. There's a charm to this lineup of games because they're a bit odd and most of them only came to the Game Boy, but evidently they don't have enough charm or appeal for people to be that interested in them. And that's Itchy and Scratchy and Miniature Golf Madness added to the list. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this look at Miniature Golf Madness, please consider giving this video a like or leaving a comment below. I'll see you next time for the Itchy and Scratchy game. It's a bit surprising there were 2 unique Itchy and Scratchy games, but we'll see what happens when there's less golf in an Itchy and Scratchy game and more fighting and biting.